1. Let me tell you about this absolutely fascinating 1958 Dodge D100 I just came across on Craigslist. This isn't just any old truck. We're talking about a piece of American automotive history here, and honestly, it's pretty well preserved for its age. At $11,200, you're looking at a classic Dodge pickup that's been given some thoughtful modern upgrades while keeping its vintage charm. The heart of this beauty is a V8 360 cubic inch engine paired with a 727 automatic transmission, a really solid powertrain combination. What's really cool is how they've modernized it with power disc brakes and power steering, making it much more drivable in today's traffic. The odometer shows 51,758 miles, and while we can't always be sure about classic car mileage, the seller presents it as a clean, good-running truck. Those Riddler custom wheels with nitro tires give it a sweet custom touch while keeping things tasteful. The yellow paint really makes this truck pop. And hey, they're even throwing in some original parts like the rear bumper, double headlight set, and those classic Dodge side emblems. The 7/6 bed gives you plenty of utility, and they've even added a Kenwood stereo with CD player for some modern tunes. Listen, I'm being straight with you. For a 65-year-old truck that's been modernized while keeping its classic appeal, this price point isn't unreasonable in today's market. 2. Let me tell you about this intriguing 1975 Chevy C10 I found on Craigslist. At $7,000, we're looking at a serious performance-modified classic truck here, and I've got to be straight with you about everything. Let's address the elephant in the room. This truck has over 300,000 miles, and the odometer has rolled over. But here's where it gets interesting. The current setup is practically a different beast altogether. We're talking about a seriously built 350 block that's been bored .060 over, pushing around 400 horsepower. That's no joke. They've modernized it with 1998 Vortec heads and maintained a street-friendly 9:1 compression ratio. The performance upgrades are pretty comprehensive. Edelbrock 4-barrel carb, electronic ignition and fuel pump, custom headers with thrush-welded mufflers. This thing probably sounds amazing. They've also addressed reliability with a new radiator and fuel tank. The really good news? The wheels, tires, and motor all have less than 3,000 miles on them, and they've freshened up the interior with new upholstery and carpet. The red paint gives it that classic muscle truck look. Being honest here, while the base truck has high mileage, you're really buying the modifications and recent refreshes. At $7,000, considering today's market and the performance upgrades, it could be a solid deal for someone looking for a hot rod C10 that's ready to rumble. 3. Let me be completely straight with you about this 1972 Ford F250 Camper Special I found on Craigslist. At $7,500, we need to look at this one carefully and honestly. First things first. The seller's description is pretty bare bones, which honestly makes me a bit cautious. They're claiming 90,000 miles, but they also admit the odometer is broken, so we really don't know the true mileage here. That's something you'll definitely want to keep in mind. The good news? It's got a recently rebuilt 390 V8 engine, which is a solid, torquey power plant that Ford was famous for. Paired with a 4-speed manual transmission, that's a pretty sweet classic drivetrain combo. The Camper Special designation means this truck came with heavy-duty suspension components from the factory, which is a nice bonus. Being totally honest here, when a seller describes their own vehicle as just being in decent shape and provides minimal details, you should probably expect to find some issues. The asking price of $7,500, or best offer, seems a bit optimistic without more information about the rebuild details or the truck's overall condition. If you're interested in this old Ford, you'll definitely want to do a thorough inspection. Check for rust in the usual spots, cab corners, bed, rocker panels, and get documentation about that engine rebuild. These old F250s are fantastic trucks when they're right, but they can also be money pits if you're not careful. 4. Let me tell you about this absolutely insane 1963 Chevy that's caught my attention on Craigslist. At $20,000, we're looking at a seriously built monster that's been transformed into a modern performance machine. Let's dive into this beast because, wow, the build list is impressive. We're talking about a Gen 6 454 that's been bored out to 460, paired with a ZZ 502 camshaft and AFR 325cc aluminum heads. That's a serious combination that's built for power. The Edelbrock intake manifold and Comp Cam's 1.7 ratio rockers show they weren't cutting any corners on the top end. The transmission setup is equally impressive. A 6L80E, that's a modern 6-speed automatic, with a 3200 stall converter and an aluminum drive shaft. They've even added a 40K transcooler to keep things running cool under pressure. What really catches my eye is the attention to detail. They've modernized everything. New wiring, rubber seals, windows, glass, ECU harness, and even a drive-by-wire pedal. The exhaust system is properly done with 3-inch mandrel bent pipes, ceramic coated in black with V-band connections. That's some serious hardware. Safety wasn't overlooked either. New brakes, drums, and brake lines, plus a new radiator to keep this powerhouse cool. The MSD coils and dual fuel filter setup with a magna pressure regulator show they've thought about reliable performance. 5. Let me be straight up about this 1979 Chevy Blazer I found on Craigslist. At $13,500, we need to have an honest conversation about what you're getting here. First, let's talk about the good stuff. This is one seriously built rig with some impressive upgrades. We're talking 1-ton axles, a massive 10-inch lift on Bilstein shocks, and 38-inch tires. That's a serious off-road setup. The small block 350 has been built up, and they've recently replaced some key components like the water pump, thermostat, aluminum radiator, and starter. But, and this is a big but, there are some significant issues we need to address. The truck currently isn't running due to fuel delivery problems. The front driveline is missing, borrowed by a buddy who never returned it. We've all been there, right? Which means this 4X4 is currently running in 2WD only. It also needs to be towed from its current location as it's not running. The odometer shows 69,000 miles, and it comes with a clean California title, which is nice. However, given that this is a 44-year-old vehicle with significant modifications, mileage might not be your biggest concern here. Being totally honest, $13,500 seems pretty steep for a non-running vehicle with missing components, even with all the upgrades. This could be an awesome rig once the fuel issue is sorted and a front driveline is installed, but you'll need to factor those repairs into your budget. 6. Let me tell you about this 1977 Ford F-150 I found on Craigslist, and I'll keep it real with you. At $14,000, we need to look at this carefully. The seller's description is surprisingly brief for a truck commanding this price, but let's break down what we know. It's powered by a 351 V8 paired with a 4-speed manual. That's a solid, reliable powertrain combo that Ford was famous for. Being a California truck originally is definitely a plus, as it likely means less rust issues than trucks from snowbelt states. The odometer shows 65,000 miles, and it's a 4X4, which is always desirable. The seller mentions they've owned it for 7 years and that it runs great, which is positive. They do admit to some paint fading on the red finish, which is pretty common for these old Fords. Now, being completely honest here, $14,000 or $14,500, as mentioned later in the ad, seems pretty ambitious for a 77 F-150 with faded paint and such a minimal description. No mention of any restoration work, mechanical updates, or maintenance history. These are important details for a 46-year-old vehicle. If you're interested in this truck, you'll definitely want to do a thorough inspection. Check the usual trouble spots, frame rails, cab corners, bed mounts, and make sure that 4X4 system is working properly. The seller seems confident about their price, stating it's very fair, but I'd recommend doing your homework on market values. 7. Let me tell you about this 1971 Chevy C10 I found on Craigslist for $8,000. Let's keep it real and break this one down. We're looking at a long bed C10 powered by the classic 350 5.7L V8, one of Chevy's most reliable and easily maintainable engines. The seller states it runs good, which is promising, and the odometer shows just under 100,000 miles. What's interesting about this one is that it's got some nice features. Power steering and it's AC capable, though they don't specify if the AC is currently working, so you might want to check that. The seller mentions both the body and interior are in good shape, and it's wearing what appears to be green paint. Being completely honest here, at $8,000, this price point is in the reasonable range for a running, driving C10 in good condition, especially in today's market. However, the description is pretty basic, and the looking to sell it quickly comment might suggest some room for negotiation. These early 70s C10s are becoming increasingly popular, and for good reason. They're simple, stylish, and parts are readily available. The long bed version, while maybe not as sought after as the short bed, offers great utility if you're planning to actually use it as a truck. 8. Let me tell you about this absolutely stunning 1972 Chevy C10 stepside I found on Craigslist. At $29,500, we're looking at a seriously high-end build here, and I've got to say, the attention to detail is impressive. Let's talk about what makes this truck special. First off, it's a rust-free Georgia truck that's been properly preserved in Minnesota, stored indoors during winters, and never seen rain in its current form. That's crucial for preservation. The matte black finish gives it that perfect modern classic look, and with only 3,200 miles on the complete build, it's practically fresh. The modifications list is extensive and thoughtful. They've modernized it with power steering and power brakes, plus a working vintage AC system that actually blows cold. That's a huge plus. The drivetrain setup is reliable with a turbo 353 speed and a rebuilt rear end, running 3.73 gears. A great combination for both cruising and performance. The interior is where this build really shines. We're talking custom black leather seats, Alcantara trim, Dakota digital gauges, and a low-car floor shifter. They've even added closed cell foam insulation throughout for a quiet, comfortable ride. That's the kind of detail that separates a good build from a great one. Mechanical upgrades include dual electronic cooling fans with variable speed control, headers with dual exhaust, and the gas tank has been relocated to the rear for better weight distribution. The truck sits right with lowered springs and coils, rolling on BF Goodrich radials. 9. Let me tell you about this 1983 Ford Bronco I found on Craigslist for $7,500, and I'll keep it straight with you all. We're looking at a full-size Bronco powered by the robust 351 Windsor V8. That's a solid power plant known for its reliability and torque. The odometer shows 61,503 miles, though with vehicles this age, it's always worth verifying if that's original. The seller mentions they've done some interior work with new carpet and seats, which is definitely a plus, since these old Broncos often need interior refreshing. They state it runs good and is a great truck, though the description is pretty bare bones for a vehicle of this vintage. Now, let's be real here. There are some things that make me raise an eyebrow. The all-caps listing and repeated serious buyers only might suggest some frustration with previous potential buyers. More importantly, the AS's sale and buyer being responsible for smog and registration could indicate potential issues there. In California, assuming that's where this is, smog can be a real challenge for modified vehicles of this era. These old Broncos are awesome vehicles when they're right, but they can also be money pits if you're not careful. The 351W is a great engine, but make sure everything's complete and original if you need to pass smog. 10. Let me tell you about this restored 1969 Ford F250 I found on Craigslist for $10,600, and I'll keep it real with you. This is a heavy-duty 3/4 ton pickup with the legendary 390 FE big block paired with the bulletproof C6 automatic transmission. That's a powertrain combo that's built to work. With 76,500 claimed original miles and an 8-foot bed, we're looking at a serious piece of American truck history here. The seller has apparently put some serious work into this truck. They've installed a new motor kit, carburetor, starter, tires, exhaust system, gas tank, windshield, and they've even refreshed the interior. The front end's been aligned too, which suggests they're paying attention to the driving dynamics. At $10,600, considering today's market and the amount of mechanical refreshing that's been done, the price isn't unreasonable for a running, driving classic F250 with the desirable 390/C6 combo. The "no low balls" comment suggests the seller is firm on price and knows what they have. The 8-foot bed makes this a genuinely useful truck, not just a showpiece. These old Fords were built to work, and with the recent mechanical updates, this one should be ready to roll. 11. Let me tell you about this interesting 1966 El Camino I found on Craigslist for $17,500. This classic muscle car truck hybrid is a project in progress, rocking that iconic white paint and packing a V8 under the hood. What's really cool is that it's got a manual transmission, which is exactly what you want in a classic like this. That authentic driving experience, you know? Now I've got to keep it real with you. The odometer has rolled over, so we're talking some serious miles on this beauty. But hey, that's pretty common for a 66. The seller's listing it in good condition with a clean title, which is definitely a plus. It's running that classic rear-wheel drive setup, which is exactly how these El Caminos were meant to be. At $17,500, they're positioning this for serious buyers. And honestly, in today's market for classic El Caminos, especially if it's solid and straight, that price isn't out of line. The seller's pretty upfront about it being a project in progress, so you'd want to check it out in person to really understand what you're getting into. These El Caminos are getting harder to find, and they've got such a unique place in automotive history, part muscle car, part utility vehicle. Just remember, any classic car project is going to need some love and attention, but that's half the fun, right? If you're seriously interested in classic El Caminos, this one might be worth checking out. 12. Let me tell you about this sweet 1978 Ford Bronco I just found listed for $30,000. This is one of those gems that really catches your eye. A true survivor with the original V8 under the hood and sitting pretty in red. What's really impressive is that we're looking at an original example with just 119,000 miles, which honestly isn't bad at all for a 45-year-old workhorse. The seller's being straight up about this Bronco. They're calling it an excellent condition survivor, and from the description it sounds pretty solid. The floors are original and in perfect shape, which is a huge deal for these old Broncos as they're usually rust magnets. Sure, there are a few scratches and some surface rust, but that's totally normal, and actually pretty minimal for a 78. What really grabs my attention is that it's a ready-to-roll kind of classic. Everything works, and you can hop in and drive it anywhere. That's huge because many classic Broncos these days are either beat to death or over-restored. This one's got the desirable automatic transmission and 4WD setup, making it both practical and fun. At $30,000 OBO, it's priced in the ballpark for a clean, original Bronco in today's market. The seller's old school, cash in person only. No text negotiations, which honestly I respect. These first-gen Broncos are seriously hot in the collector market right now, and finding one that's both original and drivable isn't easy. 13. Let me tell you about this absolutely killer 1985 Ford F250 I found on Craigslist for $15,000. This isn't your average old work truck. We're looking at a meticulously restored 6.9L diesel beast with some seriously desirable features. The odometer shows 12,768, but it has rolled over, which is expected for a truck of this vintage. What really makes this F250 special is the level of restoration and maintenance that's gone into it. The seller has clearly been a proper enthusiast, doing things right since 2018. We're talking about a 4X4 with manual transmission. That's got a new clutch, by the way, which is pretty much the holy grail setup for these old Fords. The green paint looks clean, and they've done the restoration properly, stripping the cab to metal and addressing any surface rust before refinishing. The list of upgrades and maintenance is impressive. New tires with only 4,000 miles, upgraded 40-gallon tank, backup fuel pump, custom reupholstered bench seat, fresh headliner, and a larger brass radiator. They've even added practical touches like vinyl flooring instead of carpet for easy cleaning. And the entire cab has been bed-lined and sound insulated. That's attention to detail. At $15,000, considering the extensive work done and the current market for well-maintained classic diesels, this seems like a solid deal. These 6.9L diesels are known for their reliability and simplicity, and this one's been set up to be both practical and enjoyable. If you're looking for a classic Ford diesel that's been properly restored and maintained, rather than just cleaned up for a quick sale, this could be your truck. 14. Let me tell you about this really interesting 1969 Ford F-250 Camper Special that's popped up for $25,000. This isn't your typical classic F-250. We're looking at something pretty unique here with a turbocharged inline-six engine. That's right, someone's taken the reliable 4.9L 300CI straight six and added some boost, which is a pretty cool twist on this classic workhorse. The truck's showing 63,928 miles on the odometer, wearing a green paint job, and comes with a clean title. What makes this particularly interesting is that it's a Camper Special Edition, which means it came from the factory with heavy-duty upgrades for hauling and towing. The 4-speed manual transmission is a huge plus for anyone who loves that authentic classic truck experience. Now, let's be real here. This is a dealer listing from McManus Motors in Colorado, so you'll want to inspect everything carefully. The combination of the Camper Special package and that turbocharged inline-six makes this a pretty unique find. These F-250S were built like tanks to begin with, and the Camper Special Editions just made them even more robust. At $25,000, you're paying for both the classic status and the unique modifications. The regular 300CI6 is already known for being nearly indestructible, and with the Turbo Edition, you're getting some modern performance with that classic character. Just remember to check out how well that turbo setup was done. That's crucial with any modified classic. 15. Let me tell you about this interesting 1978 El Camino I found listed for $13,500. This is one of those honest survivors with 145,000 original miles on the clock. And what's really nice is that it's only had 3 owners throughout its life. That's pretty rare for a 45-year-old vehicle. The seller's being upfront about everything here. They've invested over $3,000 in recent maintenance and work over the past year, which shows they've been taking care of it. It's running its original V8 engine. And here's something important. It's got all its original smog equipment intact and actually passes emissions testing, which is huge for a California car of this era. The body's straight, which is always good news for these El Caminos, and it's sporting some new wheels that freshen up the look. What I really appreciate is that the seller has documentation of the car's history. That paper trail is gold when you're dealing with classics. Plus, it's got registration paid up through November 2025, so you won't have to worry about that for a while. At $13,500, considering today's market for classic El Caminos and the recent maintenance investment, it seems like a fair ask for a running driving example that's emissions compliant. These 78S might not be the most sought-after year, but they're becoming increasingly appreciated as classic daily drivers. 16. Let me tell you about this super clean 1985 Ford Ranger XL I found for $6,900. Now this is something special. We're talking about a one-owner truck with 133,000 original miles, which is pretty rare for these first-gen Rangers. What makes this even better is it's the desirable 4X4 model with the straight-six engine and manual transmission. That's basically the holy grail setup for these trucks. The seller's being really straightforward here, and you can feel the pride of ownership in their description. They've had this truck in their family since day one, and it shows. It's been well maintained and just passed smog, which is a big deal for a vehicle of this age. The brown paint might not be everyone's first choice, but it's got that classic 80s charm. What really catches my attention is that they just put new tires on it, and everything's reported to be working properly, including the 4X4 system. That's crucial because these old 4X4 systems can often be problematic if not maintained. The fact that it starts on turn of the key and has no mechanical issues is pretty impressive for a 38-year-old truck. At $6,900, considering it's a one-owner, well-maintained 4X4 with the straight-six engine, I'd say that's pretty fair in today's market. These first-gen Rangers are becoming increasingly collectible, especially clean, unmodified examples like this one. Plus, you're getting a truck that's been cared for by the same family since new. That's practically unheard of. 17. Let me tell you about this sweet 1956 Ford F100 I found listed for $22,000. This is one of those iconic 50s pickups that just oozes classic American style, and it's got some interesting features that make it stand out. The truck's rocking a rebuilt 292 Y-block V8, which is the original engine, paired with a Ford-O-Matic 3-speed automatic transmission. That's a pretty desirable powertrain combo for these classics. What's really interesting is that this F100 has been upgraded with electric windows, which is a nice modern touch while keeping the classic look. The truck's showing 18,000 miles, though we should probably assume that's since the rebuild rather than original miles. It's wearing a gray paint job, and the seller describes it as a good-looking truck, which is pretty straightforward. Now I've got to keep it real with you. The seller's description is pretty brief, so you'd definitely want to check out all the details in person. These 56 F100s are highly sought after, and at $22,000, you're in the ballpark for a solid driver quality example, especially with a clean California title. The combination of the original rebuilt Y-block and Ford-O-Matic transmission is definitely a plus for authenticity. These trucks are known for their beautiful styling. That wraparound windshield and those distinctive fenders are just classic Americana at its finest. 18. Let me tell you about this absolutely stunning 1970 Chevy C10. I found listed for $25,000. This isn't your average work truck. We're looking at what appears to be a really well-done example in yellow that's been given some smart performance upgrades while keeping the classic look intact. Under the hood, you've got the legendary 350 V8, but they've stepped it up with an Edelbrock high-rise manifold and 4-barrel carburetor setup, which should give this truck some serious punch. What's really nice is they've added the essential comfort and safety upgrades, power steering and front power disc brakes, making this classic actually enjoyable to drive in today's traffic. The seller's being pretty confident about the condition, describing the body as super straight with near-flawless paint and excellent chrome and glass. With 91,344 miles showing, it's been driven enough to prove its reliability, but not so much that it's worn out. The fact that they're saying it can drive anywhere is a big deal for a 53-year-old truck. At $25,000, considering the current market for well-maintained C10s and the upgrades this one has, the price isn't out of line. These 1967 to 72 C10s are some of the most sought-after classic trucks out there, and this one seems to hit all the right notes. It's got the right engine, useful upgrades, and appears to be in excellent condition. 19. Let me tell you about this wicked 1961 F100 unibody I found for $14,900. Now this isn't your average 61 F100. We're talking about a serious sleeper with a thunderous 429 CI-V8 from a 68 Ford stuffed under the hood. These unibody F100s are pretty rare to begin with, and this one's been given some serious muscle car heart. The seller's being straight up about everything. It's a driver, not a show queen. They're actually using it for monthly trips to Orange County, which tells you it's properly sorted. The odometer shows 36,000 but has rolled over, which is expected for a 62-year-old truck. What really catches my attention is all the smart upgrades. They've got a Holley 600 4-barrel carb, Pertronix ignition, and a C6 automatic transmission, which is bulletproof when paired with big power. They've also made some crucial safety improvements, like converting to a dual master cylinder brake system and relocating the gas tank from the cab to the bed. That's a big safety upgrade these old trucks really need. The maintenance list is impressive. New shocks, brakes, kingpins, wheel cylinders, and a new seat. The aluminum radiator is another smart addition for keeping that big 429 cool. Those Falcon tires are a nice modern touch for better handling and safety. At $14,900, considering the upgrades and the fact that it's a running, driving unibody with a monster motor, the price seems pretty fair in today's market. These unibody F100s are becoming more collectible, and finding one that's been thoughtfully modified and actually driven regularly is pretty rare. 20. Let me tell you about this sweet 1965 El Camino I found listed for $25,000. This is one of those honest classics that's been given all the right attention where it matters most. What makes this one special is that it's got its numbers matching 283 V8 engine, which has been freshly rebuilt. And they've got the receipts to prove it, which is huge for authenticity. The odometer shows 50,246 but has rolled over, which is totally expected for a 58-year-old vehicle. What's really impressive is the list of recent mechanical work. They've basically refreshed the entire fuel system: new gas tank, fuel lines, sending unit, fuel pump, and a rebuilt carb. That's exactly the kind of thorough maintenance you want to see in a classic. The brake system has also been completely overhauled with a new booster, shoes, drums, and wheel cylinders. This is crucial because these old cars often need brake work to be safely drivable in modern traffic. The black paint gives it that classic muscle car look, and it's paired with an automatic transmission for easy cruising. At $25,000, considering it's a numbers-matching car with documented recent mechanical rebuilds, the price is in the ballpark for a solid '65 El Camino. These second-gen El Caminos are becoming increasingly collectible, especially ones with their original engines.